White House insiders spoke to the Washington Post, and it turns out that there seems to be a little bit of a divide in Trump's administration. It turns out that some people disagree with things like strategy and messaging, and I love this kind of drama, so let's get into it. Now, first, where did this information come from? According to the Washington Post, the account of Trump's tumultuous first days in office comes from interviews with nearly a dozen senior White House officials and other Trump advisors and confidants, some of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private conversations and moments. Now, the most interesting part about all of this was the internal discussion regarding the Women's March. Now, of course, Donald Trump was publicly dismissive of the march. He made it seem as though it was much to do about nothing. But behind the scenes, he was apparently furious. So Trump has been resentful, even furious, at what he views as the media's failure to reflect the magnitude of his achievements. And he feels demoralized that the public's perception of his presidency so far does not necessarily align with his own sense of accomplishment, right? So apparently he saw the marches and, juxtapose the gigantic marches with the audience for the inauguration, and he wasn't happy. So he goes to Sean Spicer and he's like, yo, you're gonna go and you're gonna release a strong statement about this. And Spicer is like, no. And apparently there were people behind the scenes that are like, this is not a good idea. But he pushed Spicer to do it, and it ended up being a disaster. So over the objections of his aides and advisors, who urged him to focus on policy and the broader goals of his presidency, the new president issued a decree. He wanted a fiery public response, and he wanted it to come from his press secretary. So on Sunday, Spicer did give a statement. And apparently it was a disaster. He was fumbling and bumbling, and it seemed like he didn't want to read a written statement. He was pausing too much, and Trump was upset about that. And so there was a lot of pressure on Spicer to really deliver that following Monday during a press conference. And apparently he did. Now, in regard to the Sunday statement that Spicer issued, apparently he hesitated over, before all of that happened, there was an issue in terms of whether or not Trump should have Spicer as his press secretary. Apparently, Reince Priebus wanted Spicer. There were other members of his administration who wanted Spicer. But then there were others, maybe people like Kellyanne Conway, who thought maybe it's not a good idea. He hesitated over selecting Spicer as White House press secretary. He did not see Spicer as particularly telegenic, well, he was right about that, and preferred a woman for the position.
So, first off, Donald Joffrey Trump. I mean, almost all of his actions here remind me of Joffrey from Game of Thrones. Impetuous, his advisors can't talk him out of anything, and the boy who would be king goes, no, I'm angry. I can't believe they complained about my crowd size. They're never allowed to complain about my size. How could they not know about my accomplishments? Go out there and yell at him, Sean. Oh, that's so sad. We're going to have this child in office for 4 years. Oh my! Joffrey wasn't around that long. This guy, we got him for 4 years, man. That's what's going to happen. And the untold damage that an impetuous child like this can do is unbelievable. Secondly, he has said in the past, look, my job, and again, these guys are leaking like a sieve because they all want to get famous. There's a dozen people who talk to the Washington Post that are Trump advisors.
That's insane.
Right.
That's a lot of people.
They're all going to write books. They're all going to go on shows. They all want to get famous because they're like Trump, right? So they're leaking like crazy. These are actually his guys, okay? And so he said in the past, look, it's my job to put on a good show. And so that's why he wants Sean Spicer to be more telegenic. That's why he says, he said it on many occasions. That he likes attractive people. He doesn't like unattractive people. That's part of the reason he didn't pick Chris Christie to be vice president. There were other reasons too, but this was another insider in the Trump campaign that he thought Chris Christie was too fat. Like, so we get grief sometimes when we kid around. I'm also an overweight American from New Jersey, and I talk about that, but we're joking, right? That's not a real factor in Chris Christie's policies. Who cares?
Right.
But for Trump, that's a real factor. John Bolton apparently did not get the position at the State Department because Trump didn't like his mustache. I'm not kidding, okay? And it's not us. It's Trump insiders that are saying this. He's a child. At the luncheon on Inauguration Day, we covered it live, and he pointed to the generals that he had decided that he was going to put in his cabinet. And he said, don't they look like they're from Central Casting? Yes, but this isn't a movie. This is real life. and you guys have to run the government. So, okay, that's why he's throwing these temper tantrums, but there's more.
So before I continue on with some more of the drama that's happening behind the scenes, I just want to note, look, my takeaway from this is he can't stand the fact that so many, what was it, 2.6 million people?
2.9 million people.
2.9 million people, Jesus, got together to protest Donald Trump. That's a lot of people, right?
That's,
he can't
by the
stand
way,
the fact that he lost the popular vote. He is so obsessed with that he keeps making false statement after false statement regarding undocumented immigrants who voted for Hillary Clinton. Are you kidding me right now? You're telling me that people who are in the country illegally are risking their lives and deportation to put in a fraudulent vote? Are you insane? That's not happening, right? You're a loser and you can't handle it. Look, you might have won with our electoral college system, but overall, you're a loser. More Americans despise you than like you, right? And he can't stand it. That's why he's always talking about how incredibly successful and popular he is. People who are successful do not constantly brag about their success.
Yeah, you don't still see Bill Gates coming out and doing a lot of press conferences with like, I'm winning with Microsoft. Microsoft is huge. I now have $60-70 billion. That's because he actually does have that money, and he has one huge. He doesn't have to brag about it. Everybody already knows.
Right.
Who comes out and says, I got no problems down there? He literally said that during a presidential debate. Believe me, I got no problems down there. So, all right, one more quote from Sean Spicer that relates to this. And by the way, it's a nice little symmetry here of Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 2.9 million people.
Yeah.
And about 2.9 million people protested Trump. It's not the same. They're spread across the country. It's just a coincidence. But Spicer, when he was yelling at the reporters and demanding that they give more credit to Joffrey, said, and I think that it's just unbelievably frustrating when you're continually told it's not big enough. Swear to God. And by the way, this was written. So I don't know that Spicer wrote it or if Trump wrote it. Frustrating when you're continually told it's not big enough, it's not good enough, you can't win.
So I heard that part of the press conference, and if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure of this, it was an answer to a question that the reporter had asked. So it wasn't a prepared statement. But I do find it interesting that he worded it that way.
Yes. Now, I'm not actually going back to the genitalia stuff. The reason I read you that quote is because it sounds like what Trump says to them all the time. That's why they're repeating it out there. And the reason Trump says it all the time is because he feels like he's talking to his dad. I know that I'm psychoanalyzing here, and I get it, and you're allowed to criticize that. Am I not merciful? Okay, but it sounds like, Daddy's never good enough and big enough, and I just can't win with you. So, okay, I bankrupted 6 companies, and you had to bail me out every time. But why is what I do never good enough, Daddy? You'll see, one day I'll be king. Uh-oh.
Yeah,
and he is.
He is. All right, so now let's move on to Kellyanne Conway. So apparently there were members of Trump's camp that thought that maybe Kellyanne Conway was not a good part of his administration. You know, maybe you should distance yourself. She says things that are controversial. So perfect example is when she made the statement about alternative facts. And so his advisors were like, oh, that looks really bad. That was not a good appearance. But Donald Trump loved it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a divide there. So Trump watched Sunday as Conway sparred with NBC's Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. Some Trump allies were unsettled by her performance, but not the president, according to one official. In fact, he had called up Reince Priebus, and he was like, oh, yeah, she's real good, right? Like, she's so good. But no, everyone's focused on the fact that she mentioned this notion of alternative facts, which is crazy, right? Trump was perturbed that the media focused on 2 words from Conway's interview, alternative facts. Yeah, because that was an admission that your camp is constantly lying to the American people.
Okay, my favorite part of that story is that he was calling Chuck Todd sleepy eyes. Okay, now both credit and discredit here. I'll be fair and give him credit that, man, those little things are sticky, right? They get in your head. So low energy Jeb Bush, I can't get it out of my head. My car the other day said low fuel. I was like, oh, there goes Jeb again. Okay, now on the other hand, it's exactly what Bush did. Also very low intellect, like a child, and he'd like to and he'd come up with clever nicknames like Long Bob and Short Bob. Long Bob is not a nickname, okay? And then instead of budget director, he would say,
Budget man.
and instead of CIA director, he'd say,
Spent a little time with the CIA man this morning, keep catching up on the events of the world.
I never, ever thought that a president would make me kind of miss George Bush.
yeah, because at least George Bush
Was a human.
Yeah, and he wasn't like Cheney manipulated him, and he did a lot of horrible things. And I don't want to excuse anything that Bush did, but you get a sense with Joffrey that he's got malice in his heart,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Whereas Bush was like, I don't know, Cheney told me that I needed the budget man, so that's why I did it, right? So, by the way,
I met with the CIA man.
who says that as president? Okay.
Oh, it's so good.
So now Trump's called Chuck Todd Sleepy Eyes. Remember my favorite nickname from Bush days, who he also trusted Putin. He said he looked into his eyes and saw his soul, and that he trusted Putin. And he gave him the nickname Pooty Poot. Oh my God. Okay. One's like a 6-year-old, the other was an 8-year-old. I don't know who's more dangerous. And what's funny is that you got right-wingers who see all this. They're not blind. They see it too, right? But they want to, no, we have our alternative facts. We have in our alternate universe, Joffrey's a really good guy. Okay, have at it, Hoss. You know who created journalism you could be proud of? You did. Our audience helped us hire an investigative reporting team. Now we're going to go for a second. tytnetwork.com/go. Let's build the best reporting team in the country together.